The way we're going to do that is by, again, modifying our query. So because we did data validation, if you double click, it should show us a calendar, and we can just pick something out of this, or they can type a valid date. That's the same thing. So let's say our report is going to be from June 1st, 2016 through some date. So that's going to be our start and end dates. So again, we need to generate our string, and our query string is supposed to be what? It's going to say, well, it's Midwestern. It's going to say and then we have to do the date column, and the date column in our temp data is not temp data, but transactions is column A. So, which means that it's supposed to say and A equals to basically that date we need it to be. So it's going to be 2016 hyphen 06 hyphen 01. So we want it not to be equal to, but we want it to be greater or equal to. So we want to be after the start date. And we want that same column A to be less than equal to the end date. So that's our 2018-01. That should be the string. So let's just test this out to make sure that works. So apparently we got no results. Okay, so our issue is that we forgot to mention that we're referring to this as a date. So we didn't build our query right. So we have to have date space, and before this one we do date space to make sure we're referring to that as a date type. And there we have it. That's our sales within that range in Midwestern region. So, and this is why you should probably test your strings before you start building them to make sure that they're accurate. So I'm going to hit escape, go back. So this should have been this. Move this from the way for now. So that's the string we need to actually build. So going back to this, I'm going to just bring this back to our regular select statement that gets everything. So that's our dashboard. So now let's build this. So what we need to do, we need to look at the start date, and if it's available, we need to make sure we also do this A is greater than that particular date thing. So let's create another if statement. So I'm going to do if. I'm going to say if this cell basically is not blank. So if I do function is blank and check this cell, so that's going to check if that cell is blank. So if it's blank, what do I want to do? I want to just leave it blank. If it's not blank, I would like to do my string. So my string is going to be A is greater or equal to date, and then in single quotes we'll have our date 2016 06 01 and close in the end. So hit enter. So it's not blank, so it will automatically just do this. Now the thing is that we need to refer to whatever's in here, because as the date changes we need to change this. So here again I'm going to use a little concatenation. So I'll do double quotes and do and sign, refer to this cell, and do another and sign for joining, hit enter, and I'm gonna find out, well, that doesn't work because it's a date, Excel date, and it's not picking that as text. It's looking at that as date. So to fix this issue, what we need to do, we need to use a function text. So let me show you what that function text, how it's gonna work separately from this. So I'm gonna do equals text, and I'm gonna click on this, what we call a number, which is a date. And as a second thing, you need to provide the format it needs to be in. So the format we need for a SQL date is 4-digit year hyphen 2-digit month hyphen 2-digit day, which means it's going to be YYYY hyphen MM hyphen DD. That's the format I want. So what that's going to do is going to take the date and it's going to convert it to a text in this particular format. So now this is text. This is not a date anymore. And you can see that because it's aligned to the left. Okay, so what I'll have to do instead, I'm going to have to grab that text function, go back here, and instead of referring to C2, which just grabs the number of that date, I'm going to paste the text function, which will create a text out of that date and give us what we need. Perfect. So that gives us the start date part out of this formula. So moving on. So I'm going to just copy this formula because most of it is going to be the same. So the next thing is going to be if we want to do the end date. So end date is C3. So we're going to change this references to C3 in this formula. And the difference is it needs to be less than or equal to that end date. And oh, it's not C3, it's D2. Obviously. That's our end date in D2 cell. Hit enter and there it is. It says that A is less than or equal to date, whatever date is in here. So now the way it should work, if we go here and pick a different date, see this should update. If we pick a different date here, this should update. And if we clear those dates, it should just be blank as a result of that. What we need to do now is build this whole string out of that. So when the user has all here and this is blank and this is blank, so in this cases, we really don't need to filter anything. It should be this whole thing. That means we have to check if the results of those things that we did are something. So do we get something in this results or are all of those blank? There are a couple of ways to go about this. You could just create like a helper worksheet to do this, which is probably the most user-friendly option, and it's also update-friendly. Although technically you could just build this whole thing in a single formula. For this demonstration, I'm going to use a helper tab. So I'm going to make a tab and call this helper formulas. What I will do, I will just grab this 3 different formulas, I'll cut them, and I'll paste it over here. And the cool thing about this cutting and pasting is that, see how it changed references to the dashboard tab instead of leaving them just A2, and it automatically updated so it refers to this cells over here on our dashboard. So now we have these, which generates these 3 things. We're going to use a function called count blank. And I'm going to go here and refer to these formulas over here. Close that, hit enter. Right now it says we have 0 blanks. So now let me just switch this to all. See, now it says there's 1 blank. If I delete this, it's going to say there are 2 blanks, because what happens is that we're set in our if statement, if there's nothing in there, put nothing. So I'm going to switch this back. So that's our count blank. So we're going to get a 0. So what's going to happen if somebody does all and they do this and they do this, it's going to be 3 as a count. And that means if it's 3 as a count, we should do nothing. It should just be this string. We'll build an if statement around this. So we'll say if that count blank equals to 3, so that means that all of them are blank, then we want to do nothing. Otherwise, we're gonna build string. So I'll just do build string for now. So right now it says build string because, well, the count blank is not equal to 3. So that's that. Now, what do we have to do if we have to build string? So we need to replace this build string with an actual something that's going to build the string. And the way we're going to do that is by using a function called text join. So I'm going to do text join, and text join is a function that can ignore blanks. They could select one, but not select the other, right? So some of them could be blanks and some of them could be filled in. Let me show you a different function first. So let me try join. So join is a function that joins pieces of text. So I'm going to join with an and string. I'm going to go to this helper and join these 3 together. Close that. That's the range. That's our regular join function. And you can see what it did. It says C equals Midwestern and A equals this and A equals that, which is perfect. That's kind of starting from this where it built everything as we wanted it to be. The problem with this, if I switch this to all, see, the first one is blank. So it's still going to do that blank and because we're using that part in our join. And that's the problem with this join. So instead of using join, we're going to use text join, which allows us to skip blanks. So I'm going to use that delimiter, the same thing. So space and space, quote, comma. I'm going to go to my helper formulas and select these. And then, you know what? The second option wasn't the formulas. The second option was ignore empty. Do we want to ignore blanks? That's what it is. So yes, so true. We want to ignore blanks. And finally, the third argument is the range we're trying to join. So close that, hit enter, and you can see what happens now. Because we have this true as a second argument, it doesn't do those blanks. So this is a blank because we selected all. It doesn't do that Midwestern part at all. If we switch to like Northeastern, see, it will do it. So now we have a dynamic way of building that part after where. But we also have to have where before this whole thing. It should say where space and then A equals or C equals, which means we're going to go before this text join and we're going to create our own where space text, and we're going to concatenate with our AND operator this text join, which means it's going to say where A is this, where this is that, and if we do Midwestern, it's going to do this string. So now, why was I doing this? Is because I'm going to take that whole formula, copy that, and go back here in this build string and see how it says build string. I'm going to replace it with that function that I made. So there we go. We make this function. Now the way this if statement is going to work, it's going to build that string. I don't need this anymore. It's going to build that string unless all of them are, this is all and these two are blank. So if these two are blank and this says all, it's basically not going to do anything because then it's going to do this blank. Great. So we have this. So that works. Now, the only part we're missing is that it also has to have this whole select statement in front of this thing. So I'm going to copy that select statement, escape, go back here, and I'm going to say before this if statement, I'm going to start with quote, paste that select statement, do another quote, and join it with this if function. Then hit enter, and you can see right now this problem is there's no space between this year and where. So I'm going to go back here and add that space right before my where statement, and that built the string. So the way this should work now, if I go switch to all, see, it will automatically dynamically create my query string that just does the date. If I remove the end date, it will just do the start date. And if I also remove the start date, it will just do nothing. And if I go and just pick Northeastern, it will just filter to Northeastern. So if you decide you want all, and you can go here and pick a particular date to start from. and we'll just do it. So that's our way to create that dynamic formula. So all we have to do now is just grab that entire thing. I'm going to copy it without equal sign and go back to here and replace in this query string this string that's basically just a hard-coded string currently to that entire formula. I'm going to hit enter. And now we're getting nothing as a result. So let's go check. So we selected everything after 2017-07-05. We probably don't have any sales after that. So I'm going to just scroll back to September. So let's see. So there it is. Everything populated, which means we have something in that date range. Good. Now I'm going to go ahead and hide this thing. Hide sheet. And I don't need all this stuff. So now we should have a dynamic dashboard. So if I remove this, this should just give us the total for everything once it updates. And see, that's our 1.2 million number. That's all the sales from all the states. If I just want to look at a particular region, Midwestern, for example, I click on that and that will update everything. So we can see our map is just Midwestern. We have our totals. We have our every other report, including the sales reps. Everything is now filtered to that. Now, if we decide we also want to just filter this, see now we have 2015. Whoops, shouldn't have clicked on that pivot table probably. 2015, 2016, and 2017, right? Let's actually move this column and make it smaller. So we have 2015, 2016, 2017. Let's say we just want to look at 2016 and 2017. So if I do a start date, which is going to be starting 2016, January 1st, and I'm going to end it, well, that by itself should do it because then there's no end date. So we've just filtered out 2015 from our report. So we have 2016, 2017, and it's Midwestern. If we want all the regions, we do all. And that should update and show us the total. And that's our, so now we can just pick different things and our dashboard should update and everything is basically using these filters on top below to get our totals. Now the only thing that I promised you I would show you is that what happens when we just pick Midwestern here is that if we go back now, it's going to just say Midwestern and all. We have to now switch back to all to be able to do to Northeastern. If you don't like the way that works, then what you could do, we can just go under view and unhide that hidden sheet we did for data validation list. And we'll just switch our unique function instead of working from the temp data tab to get all of those. I'll just remove it and go under transactions and get my regions from here. Doesn't want to go that way, but I'll just do this. See, there we go. Hit enter. Now it's taking that from transactions tab, which is not filtered. So we should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this sheet. Right click, hide. And now it shouldn't matter. So you should be able to just go here and switch to Western right away. You can switch to Southern. And you can see how everything updates, including on the map and everywhere else. And we can do all, and that does all. So again, not the prettiest looking dashboard, but this should give you the idea how you make this work. And then we take this and we hide this too. And now we're just going to be left with our transactions data, which is our initial data. And we have our dashboard that shows us all the totals. All right, and that will be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.